Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to Podcasts of the Caribbean, a podcast covering the world of Pirates of the Caribbean, from the theme parks to the movies and everything in between. My name is Justin Helmer, and I will be your host on this voyage through the Caribbean. It'd be too late to alter course now, mateys. Hello and welcome back to Podcasts of the Caribbean. This is episode 64, and today we are going to be diving back into the world of the Disney theme parks to cover all the smaller Pirates of the Caribbean attractions, entertainment, and other things you can find at the parks around the world. There's a bunch of stuff I want to cover today, so this will definitely be a very fun episode. We'll be talking about stage shows, interactive walk-around experiences, and seasonal events that have taken place from 2006 onward. But before we get into things, I want to quickly mention something very exciting that just went live a few days ago. If you follow me on my social media accounts, you will have seen that I released some new merch paying tribute to the upcoming 20th anniversary of Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest this year. I have a feeling Disney won't do anything to celebrate the anniversary, so I wanted to get something out there for people who want a shirt or a sticker or something to commemorate it. The design is a 20, but the 2 is a Kraken tentacle and the 0 is the jar of dirt. I think it came out absolutely fantastic, and I highly urge all of you to click the merch link in the episode description and check it out. I want this to be something that's more so for the community rather than me, so any profit I receive from these sales will all be donated to the Trevor Project. I figure we can do some good here, so just know if you purchase some of this stuff, your money is going to a good cause. This is only the start of our celebration of Dead Man's Chest's 20th anniversary this year. There's going to be a lot of fun content leading up to the anniversary in July. So keep an eye out and check out the merch if you're interested. But with that out of the way, let's dive right into the episode. To start off, we're going to quickly talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean characters that you can meet at the Disney parks. I figured I would bring this up since it's vaguely in the same category as the rest of the things we're covering today. Over the years, there's been a few characters that have been brought out as meet and greet characters, and of course, the first one that debuted was none other than Captain Jack Sparrow himself. It's hard to really nail down a date, but I believe Jack debuted in the parks in 2006 to coincide with the release of Dead Man's Chest. This ties in with the first show we'll talk about in just a minute, which also debuted in 2006. But Jack can be seen in most of the Disney parks, usually around the area of Pirates of the Caribbean. He can also be seen on the Disney cruise ships, particularly on Pirate Night, aka the best night of the cruise, and also on Castaway Cay if the cruise ship stops there. In the future, I want to do an episode dedicated to the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff on the cruise ships, but I'm waiting until the new stage show Jack Sparrow and the Siren Queen debuts when the Disney Adventure ship begins sailing later this year. But yeah, Jack is the most common character to find out of the 4 you can find in the parks. The second character that can be found in the parks is Captain Hector Barbossa. I don't know when Barbossa debuted in the parks, but I would assume it was probably sometime between 2007 and 2011. Could have been in 2006 as well, but I'm not sure exactly when. But unlike Jack, who will usually have meet and greets and be seen around the parks, Barbossa is much more rare. You'll usually only see him during special events, where you may have some meet and greets, or you can see him in parades, usually the Boo to You Halloween parade at Walt Disney World. And much like Barbossa, you can also see Angelica Teach in the parks as well, although she is very similar in the fact you will only really see her during special events and parades. She debuted back in 2011 and actually did have a dedicated meet and greet with Jack Sparrow for a bit of a time, obviously to coincide with the release of On Stranger Tides. But once that meet and greet ended, she became a more rare character over the years. The fourth and final character you can find in the parks is actually not even from the movies. In fact, she is from the original attraction and the only Pirates attraction character you can meet in the parks. And being from the original attraction, you will only find this character in New Orleans Square at Disneyland in California. The character I'm referring to is Red, aka the new pirate version of the redhead character from the attraction. If you're unfamiliar, back in 2018, Disney changed the character of the redhead and the wench auction scene at the attraction, fearing it was becoming more insensitive as time went on. I didn't personally see the issue back then. I was pretty against the change, but once it happened and I saw it in person, I actually thought the change was executed really well. Obviously, I loved the original ride and how it was when it first opened and the history behind it all, but I can't be bothered trying to make up reasons to complain about it when there isn't really anything to complain about. That's just not really how I roll, and I personally have really come to like Red a lot. She has far more character than the non-speaking redhead ever had, so that's my 2 cents on the issue. But anyway, Red debuted as a walk-around character in Disneyland also in 2018 after the scene was changed. Unfortunately, you can only find her in Disneyland, which I find very annoying. I don't know why they still haven't brought her over to Walt Disney World as a meet and greet, but maybe it'll happen someday. But she is really, really cool, and she will usually roam around New Orleans Square in Disneyland, and sometimes she will appear with Jack Sparrow, which leads to some really cool interactions between the two of them. Whenever I finally get out to Disneyland, I really want to meet Red and Jack at the same time, as I've watched some videos of both of them together, and their banter is great. But those are the only 4 Pirates characters that have had physical walk-around meet and greets over the years in the parks. I find it crazy that they've never had Will or Elizabeth at one point, even for a special event where Disney will usually bring out rare characters or just new characters that are exclusive to those events, but I guess they are just less popular characters, unfortunately. Anyway, let's now move on to the first show we'll be talking about, and that is Captain Jack Sparrow's Pirate Tutorial. This debuted in Walt Disney World in 2006, specifically in Adventureland next to the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, and it actually lasted all the way up to 2018, which is wild. I do remember experiencing this show in person when I was very young, and it was a fun show that got kids involved in learning how to be a pirate. Honestly, kind of similar to the Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow attraction we talked about on the last episode, just more of a smaller outdoor show with a live actor playing Jack Sparrow. And in addition to Jack, there was one other character in this show who was named Mac. He was a new character created for the show, and if you look up images or videos of the show online, you will see he looks very similar to Joshua Gibbs. I don't know why they didn't just use Gibbs instead, as that would have been a lot cooler in my opinion, but I'm sure there's some reason behind the decision. I think it was more so that it would be easier to use different actors to play the character over the years, so they weren't limited to a specific body type to portray Gibbs. But the show was around 15 minutes long, and Jack and Mac would teach kids various pirate skills, like how to raise the mainsail and some other stuff to get them involved. And the big part of the show would be when Jack would select kids from the audience to practice sword fighting. A few kids would take turns dueling Mac, and afterward the show would end with Jack getting everyone to sing Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And the kids that were brought up to do the sword fighting would get pirate certificates. But that was pretty much it. It was a fun little show for kids, and having witnessed it in person, it was very entertaining at my age. When the show first debuted, it kind of just sat in a small area opposite the Pirates attraction, but eventually was moved to a small little stage nearby in the Caribbean Plaza area. This little stage area was also used for Jack Sparrow meet and greets over the years as well, when the show was not playing. But that is pretty much all there is to talk about with this show. It was just a fun little thing to get some participation from the kids in the audience. But we'll move now to the next thing we're talking about today, and this actually isn't something that exists anywhere. In fact, it never saw the light of day. And why are we even talking about it then? Well, because I stumbled upon it when I was researching this episode, and I thought it would be a really fun thing to include. This would have been an addition to the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, specifically at Disneyland in California. And the name of this concept was Pirates of the Scaribbean. Sound intriguing? Well, let's talk about it. So this concept was brought up around the time when the Disney Imagineers wanted to update the Pirates attraction after the success of the first movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Now, information is very scarce on this concept, but most of what I'm about to tell you is from a Jim Hill Media article from January of 2005. For those unaware, Jim Hill Media is a very reputable and trusted source in the theme park community. So let me read what Jim Hill said about this concept. So picture this. During the day, Disneyland runs its standard version of Pirates of the Caribbean, which has been delighting theme park goers since March of 1967. But once the sun sets, this New Orleans Square attraction temporarily stops operations for 15 minutes to a half hour to reset. And then, well, it's the same old ride right up until the moment that you enter the harbor for POTC's bombardment scene. But then, you can't help but notice the moon is out, and the crew of the Wicked Wench looks different somehow. Could it be there's skeletons now manning the cannons on that pirate ship? But this is just the first of many surprises for all you Pirates fans out there. For instead of following the standard route and just floating to the right, your boat now follows a new path across the harbor. You veer to the left instead, going between the Wicked Wench and the Spanish fort. Once that's done, you enter a darkened channel that takes you behind the pre-existing POTC sets, where pools of moonlight occasionally reveal skeletal pirates who, just as they've always done, loot and then try to burn down the city. Only this time, these skeletal pirates actually notice us, that there's a boatload of tourists floating close nearby. So periodically, they make attempts to board our vessel and or deliberately try and sink us. Jim Hill goes on to say, but the fact of the matter is, folks, that this sort of redo for Disneyland's pirates actually has been proposed. Senior Imagineers have gone down to Anaheim and wandered all through the cavernous show building out beyond the berm. They've even measured the available space behind POTC's pre-existing sets. And sure enough, if you take advantage of POTC's boat storage space, there really is enough room back there for another flume, as well as space for several new show scenes for this more horrific take on Pirates of the Caribbean. So when's this Pirates redo supposedly going to happen, you ask? Well, that's really the wrong question to ask in this situation, folks. Given how controversial this proposed nighttime retheming project supposedly is, perhaps the more apt question might be, how likely is it this project ever actually gets off the ground? To be honest, a lot of that depends on how these new Pirate sequels do. Should these films rack up grosses approaching to what The Curse of the Black Pearl earned, I'd wager that Disney company management would then take a closer, more serious look at this proposal. But for now anyway, this proposed Pirates redo remains one of the more unusual proposals bouncing around Walt Disney Imagineering these days. Good old family-friendly pirates by day, much darker, significantly scarier version of the same ride at night. So thanks once again to Jim Hill for reporting on this concept. Obviously, as we know, this never happened, and I'm kind of bummed it didn't. This actually seemed like such a cool idea. Just the idea of having a ride that differs depending on the time of day you ride it is a super intriguing concept to me. Now, there are a few snippets of concept art of this on the Pirates of the Caribbean wiki, mainly just some skeletons swiping a guest in the boat. Nothing that crazy, but it is very early concept art, and as you can tell from the Jim Hill article I just read, this was only in early stages of development before it was canceled. We did get changes to the Pirates ride around this time, but that of course ended up just including movie characters like Jack Sparrow and Barbossa into the ride, which would occur in 2006. And while this was a very cool concept, I don't see a world where this could have ever passed the concept stage. While the original Pirates ride would still exist during the day, Disney, being the company it is, probably wouldn't want this horror version of the ride in their family-friendly parks. Obviously, we have the Haunted Mansion, but there aren't actually any ghosts threatening to kill you in that. Nevertheless, I figured I would bring this up just so more people were aware of this concept. Let me know what you guys think of this idea. I think it could have been really, really interesting. But we're going to stay in Disneyland for the next thing we're talking about, and this actually did get built. In Disneyland, along the rivers of America, there is Tom Sawyer's Island, which is only accessible by raft and was obviously themed to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. In 2007, though, the island was given a pirate-themed overlay to coincide with the release of At World's End, and it was called Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island. While the island itself stayed the same, pirate elements were added in to enhance it and obviously tie in the Pirates of the Caribbean name into the area, since Tom Sawyer's Island has always struggled with people actually going over and checking it out. The island's mostly a giant playground for kids, but it also is probably the most peaceful area of Disneyland. But let's talk about what they added in this overlay. First up, we'll start with Dead Man's Grotto, which is the rethemed version of what used to be Injun Joe's Cave. The cave is so cool, and when you first enter, you come into contact with the dead man's chest. The whole room is just enveloped in the sound of the beating heart in the chest, and if you touch the chest, the lights change, and Davy Jones' voice can be heard saying, "Here lies the beating heart of Davy Jones." It is super, super cool, and as you go farther into the cave, there is a little window that peeks into an area full of treasure. And every so often, two things can happen. Either Pintel's cursed skeleton head will pop out of the center to scare you, or sometimes a skeleton hand holding an eyeball will swing down from above, which is meant to be Raggedy. You can also hear their voices here too, which is really neat. There are a few more of these little alcoves you can look into as well in this area, but further in, you'll come across a jail cell containing a pirate, and there is a notice on the wall signed by Josh McGibbs, saying that this is the fate of anyone who dares to steal the plunder of a fellow shipmate. This pirate in the cell will say various lines, and every so often, the moon will come out on a little screen at the back of the cell, and the pirate will turn into a skeleton, revealing he took a piece of the cursed treasure. It is a very cool little effect, and overall, the Dead Man's Grotto area is just so, so cool. But outside of that, there is Smuggler's Cove, which has a bunch of different things for kids to interact and play with. There's a capstan you can spin, which is actually attached to a winch in the shipwreck nearby, and as you spin the capstan, the winch will raise the treasure chest out of the shipwreck, and you will eventually see a skeleton clinging onto the bottom of the chest if you raise it high enough. Another play feature are the pumps, where you can pump the water out of another sunken boat, and if you do it enough, it reveals some pirate skeletons surrounded by a bunch of treasure. And right to the left of these pumps is an actual replica of the bone cage from Dead Man's Chest, and you can walk inside of it. It is so cool, and I really want to take a picture inside of there. But nearby, you can also go up to Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn's treehouse, where you can see they've named each other Tom Sawyer, the Black Avenger of the Spanish Main, and Huck Finn, the Red-Handed. There's also a little lookout point nearby called Castle Rock, which has a bunch of spyglasses that you can look through. And there's also another shipwreck you can walk through, and you can also hear Davy Jones' voice here as well sometimes, warning you to beware. There's also a wooden fort on the island, which is named Fort Wilderness, but this was part of the original island, and I don't think it's really accessible in any way currently. But near that, there is a really cool area with a whole bunch of treasure chests and gold laid out around a backdrop with a Jolly Roger flag. It is a very, very cool photo op area, and also sometimes a meet and greet area for Jack Sparrow. But if you go back toward the dock where you arrive and exit the island, you'll find two buildings. First is Lafitte's Tavern, named after the real pirate John Lafitte. You can't go inside, but if you get close near the windows, you can actually hear pirates inside laughing and having a good time. The other building is very cool though, as it's a little blacksmith shop with a water wheel on the side, and this blacksmith shop is actually owned by none other than Will Turner. You can see the sign for the shop that says Blacksmith W. Turner, Proprietor. I love how they tied Will into this a bit, as I feel like he's always forgotten about by everything that Disney does. But you can look inside and see a whole bunch of swords in the process of being forged, and on the other side of the building there's a sign that lists out the services Will provides, like ship's hardware, swords, chains forged and repaired, general ironwork, and horseshoes, all of the highest quality. I could definitely see when Will retires from piracy, maybe after the curse is broken, he could definitely take up blacksmithing again just as a hobby. I think that's my personal headcanon for what Will does in his older age. But that is everything you can find on Pirate's Lair. However, during the first year of the overlay, there was actually a short stunt show near Lafitte's Tavern called Jack Sparrow's Swashbuckling Adventure. I actually only found out about this when I was researching this episode, thanks to an All Ears article about Pirate's Lair. The show ran from opening in May of 2007 to January 2008, and it revolved around Jack Sparrow, of course, trying to get his hands on a map leading to a big pirate treasure somewhere on the island. But the show doesn't start with Jack Sparrow. It actually starts with a pirate character named Kayla and her crewmate. The map is in this enchanted chest called the Cask of the Unknown, and apparently whoever goes in the chest can never get back out. But she grabs the map out of the chest and sees a hand gripping the other side, and she ends up pulling out the map and Jack Sparrow. Kayla demands Jack to give her the map, but they're interrupted as her crewmate betrays her, and another pirate swings down from a zip line, and Jack and Kayla form an alliance to defeat the other pirates, and the show ends with Jack tricking one of the pirates to fall into the Cask of the Unknown, and the other one just runs away scared. Jack tricked the guy who fell into the Cask of the Unknown with a fake map, and he reveals he still has the real one at the end of the show, and the show ends with him and Kayla beginning to hunt for the treasure. It was a fun little show that really enhanced the area, especially if you happen to be on the sailing ship Columbia or the Mark Twain riverboat, as you got to watch part of the show as you sailed past the island. Overall, Pirate's Lair was and still is a fun little spot, mostly for kids, but a very neat place to check out and just relax. But let's move from Disneyland and head across the Pacific Ocean to Tokyo Disneyland. In 2007, Tokyo Disneyland had a short-lived nighttime stage show in front of the castle called Wet and Wild Pirates Night to coincide with the release of Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Also, please look up this show, as the soundtrack to this is probably one of the best of any Disney park show. It is a banger. Like, I will never shut up about how good the music in this show is. Please check it out. There's not much to talk about with this one, as information as to how it came together is pretty limited, but it debuted on July 20th, 2007, and went until August 31st that year. And it was actually popular enough to actually be brought back in 2011 to promote the release of On Stranger Tides. This second version of the show was called Wet n Wild Pirates Night, We Are Back. And from my research, I think this version was the same show as the original. I couldn't find a dedicated video of the We're Back version, and all the videos I watched of the show all look the same, so it may have just been the same thing both times. But Wet n Wild Pirates Night We're Back debuted on July 8th, 2011, and ran until August 31st as well. As for the show itself, it was actually a very fun show with pyrotechnics and water shooting up throughout. The show starts out with a big pirate party, and Jack Sparrow along with a bunch of pirates come out and dance and sing. There's a great moment where Jack is slapped multiple times by the female pirates on stage, and they begin to sing the main song of the show, which once again is a banger. I first watched a video of the show late last year, and since then, this song has been getting stuck in my head all the time. It is up there with the pirate rock music from the Boo to You Halloween parade at Walt Disney World, if any of you are familiar with that. Both of those are absolute bangers, and I will rock out to either any day of the week. Please look up both if you're unfamiliar. You will not regret it. But after the song, the lights go out and a bunch of Davy Jones' crew come out and surprise Jack. They aren't specific crew members, just to let you know. Like, you won't find Macus or Prolifico or Kalenico here. Instead, you'll only find a group of octopus-looking guys. But anyway, Jack runs from them for a while, and we get some pyrotechnics during this part. But afterward, Jack and the pirates begin to try and fight back, and the water cannons go off, and some of the pirates begin to use water hoses to repel the Dutchman crewmen. Apparently, they do not like water very much, which is very interesting considering the ship they serve on. But anyway, after they are defeated by a final big blast of water, they actually re-emerge as normal-looking pirates. So I guess the water somehow broke their curse. But Jack is now standing on the top of a ship's mast that raised up from the stage at this point, and everyone, along with the now reformed pirates, all sing the Wet n Wild song again, and during this part, the pirates actually spray the water hoses into the crowd, because you can't name this show Wet n Wild Pirates Night if you don't get wet. Keep this in mind for the next show we're going to talk about in just a minute, but the show ends with a big finale of pyro and water spraying all over the stage, all over the audience, and that is the end of the show. Overall, this show is just absolutely incredible, and I really wish I could have experienced this in person. It seems like so much fun. And man, I will never get over the music from this. Please, please check it out on YouTube. You will not regret it. It is honestly probably in my top 5 Disney Parks shows of all time. I am not joking. It is that good. But we're now going to quickly jump ahead to another pirate show that took place at Tokyo Disneyland. And the reason why is that this next show was the third iteration of Wet n Wild Pirates Night. For this iteration, the show moved over to the other park, Tokyo Disney Sea, and was renamed to Pirates Summer Battle Get Wet. This was all part of the new Disney Pirate Summer event that began in 2017 at Tokyo Disney Sea. This event was a tie-in to the release of Dead Men Tell No Tales in 2017, and from pictures and videos, it looked really, really cool. And what is neat is that the event didn't only take place in 2017. It actually became an annual event and ran each summer during July and August. I don't think the event is going on anymore, unfortunately, but it did run for a few years. I could not find out when it actually ended, but I would assume 2019 was the last year it occurred, as it was scheduled to run again in 2020, but was canceled when the park closed during the COVID pandemic. What's very interesting is that in 2020, they released all of the Disney Pirate Summer merchandise for that year on like the Tokyo Disney Store website, so you can still get Disney Pirate Summer 2020 merchandise even though the actual event didn't happen that year, which is really cool. But the actual event at the park consisted of special merchandise, as I just mentioned, food, and photo ops around the park, and of course, the main event of Disney Pirate Summer was the big show that took place around the big Mediterranean harbor area at the front of the park. The show was called Pirate Summer Battle Get Wet. And yes, the show is called Get Wet, and you better believe you are getting wet. Like Wet n Wild before it, the show includes Jack Sparrow and a bunch of pirates But this time the stakes are higher and Barbossa is also included, as he and Jack are essentially battling it out around the lagoon that is in the center of the Mediterranean harbor area. In the middle of the lagoon, a little island with a lighthouse emerges, and the Black Pearl sails into the lagoon commanded by Hector Barbossa. There are multiple main areas for this show around the lagoon, where groups of Barbossa's pirate crew will be. But the main area is in the Puerto Paradiso area, which is right next to the entrance of the park. But half the show involves Barbossa and his pirates trying to recruit the guests to his crew. And this is where we get to see why this show is called Get Wet, as the pirates begin to throw buckets of water at the guests repeatedly. So yes, you were getting wet if you were in the audience of this show. Like, you also got wet during Wet n Wild Pirates Night, but I think you got way, way wetter during the Get Wet show. This seemed like so much fun, and I wish I could have experienced it in person. Halfway through the show, the Dying Gull emerges in the lagoon, commanded by, of course, Jack Sparrow. And the two ships sail around for a few minutes while the pirates continue to soak themselves and the audience in water, and eventually, Jack Sparrow and Barbossa come onto land and meet up in the Puerto Paradiso area. I think they both move through the main areas of the show in this part, but after they leave, the pirates just go crazy with the water. There is so much water being thrown around, it literally looks like it's raining. But Jack then appears on the Black Pearl, and Barbossa is angered by this, so he takes the Dying Gull. And the two ships begin to fire at each other, but they hit the lighthouse, which blows smoke to make it look like the cannons are hitting it. The ships continue to battle it out in the lagoon, and while this is going on, there is just water flying all over the place. Both ships are also shooting water cannons into the audience. There are two barges that are also firing water cannons off toward the audience, and all the pirates on the shore are just making it rain with buckets of water. The show ends with Jack still on the Pearl, but he notices Barbossa cut out the middle of his map, which is a very fun reference to Jack cutting out the middle of the Malkoon map at the end of At World's End. But that is the end of the show, and I can only imagine how fun this show must have been in person, especially on a hot summer day in Tokyo. But that is it for all the fun pirate stuff at the Tokyo parks. But let's now go back to Walt Disney World, as I wanted to briefly talk about the interactive experience that was called A Pirate's Adventure Treasure of the Seven Seas. This opened in the spring of 2013, and it's an interactive game/scavenger hunt type thing that Disney has done a few times in the past. It is fairly similar to the multiple interactive games that have been at Epcot over the years. These included Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure, then Asian Peas World Showcase Adventure, and now currently DuckTales World Showcase Adventure. What set this Pirates one apart was that it was not in Epcot's World Showcase, which is kind of crazy, and instead took place around Adventureland in Magic Kingdom, mainly in the Caribbean Plaza area, but also throughout the rest of Adventureland on some of the later hunts. There were 5 different adventures that built upon each other, so you would go in order through them. Doing these quests ended up making special effects happen in the area and stuff like that, and each quest had its own map that contained a few different symbols you needed to find around Adventureland. This map also had clues on how to find these symbols, and once you found each one, dialogue and special effects would happen in that area, usually in like special displays that were made for the game. To start this game, you would go to the back of the Caribbean Plaza area to a little shack that was the pirate headquarters for the game. This building originally used to be called the Crow's Nest and was sponsored by Kodak and sold film, batteries, and cameras. But you would go to this building and you'd be tasked with the first quest. The quests were named Heads You Lose, Blackbeard, The King's Ransom, Guardian's Curse, and Haven Defense. After you completed each quest, you would then head back to the main building and you'd be rewarded with a special card related to that quest. Then, if you wanted, you could pick up the next one. Each quest rewarded a card, and if you finished all 5, you would get a bonus card that had a message from Jack Sparrow welcoming you to his crew. I also saw that apparently they gave out fast passes to Pirates of the Caribbean back in the day if you finished all 5 quests, but I don't think they do that anymore with the Lightning Lane stuff. The game closed during the pandemic when the parks closed down, but reopened in 2021. I think most of everything is the same after it reopened, but I've never actually had the chance to do it, so I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully the next time I get to Walt Disney World I'll have time to do this, as I've wanted to do it for a very long time, but I've just never had time on the trips with my family. Each quest would usually take around 15 to 20 minutes to complete, so if you wanted to do all 5 of them, it would probably take about an hour and a half or so. And you didn't have to do all of them at the same time. You could do one and then come back later in the day and do the next one, or you could do all 5 at the same time and get it over with. But it seemed like a very fun thing, and hopefully at some point I will get a chance to do it. But we're going to move back over to the Asian parks now for this next attraction, and this is another spooky entry in this list. This was a Halloween event that took place at Hong Kong Disneyland and Shanghai Disneyland in 2017, and it was inspired by Dead Men Tell No Tales. In Hong Kong Disneyland, the event was called Pirates of the Caribbean Ghost Trail, and it took place in Adventureland. However, in Shanghai Disneyland, it was called Treasure Cove Ghost Pirates, a Trial of Darkness, because Shanghai Disneyland has Treasure Cove, the Pirates of the Caribbean themed land, which we talked about in the past on the podcast. The general story around the event in both parks revolved around Salazar's crew coming ashore and searching for Jack Sparrow. I guess when they were putting this together, they forgot that Salazar and his crew cannot step on land, but it's not that important in the grand scheme of things. The event in Hong Kong only lasted for 2017, and was a little trail in Adventureland where Salazar's crew would roam around the area, lightly scaring guests and chasing after Jack when he made an appearance. However, in Shanghai, the event was a lot bigger given that they had a whole pirate-themed land to play in. The ghosts were not limited to Salazar's crew, and in fact were actually ghost pirates afflicted with something called the Darkness. And there was all kinds of various ghost pirates roaming the land. There was even a small little stunt show where Jack Sparrow faces off against some of these ghost pirates, which is really, really cool. I watched a video of this show, and it's so funny because midway through, Jack comes in with a cloak over him to hide his identity. It is so funny. But the event in Shanghai ran for a few years, at least until 2019, where I assume it shared the same fate as Disney Pirate Summer in Tokyo, being canceled in 2020 because of the pandemic. But that brings us to the end of our trip through the lesser-known Pirates of the Caribbean shows, experiences, and entertainment that existed at the Disney parks through the years. I highly recommend looking up videos of these experiences, especially the shows, because they are super fun even just to watch. And once again, definitely check out the videos of Wet n Wild Pirates Night, because once again, I cannot tell you how good that show is. The music is so good. And even Pirate Summer Battle Get Wet is really fun to watch as well, so I highly recommend watching both of those shows. You will not regret it. But if you've been keeping track, you'll know this is the penultimate episode of Season 6, and on the next episode, we will finally be talking about Terry Rossio's original script for Pirates of the Caribbean 5. It is really, really interesting, and I've wanted to talk about it for a very long time now, so hopefully you're all excited for that. It'll be a very fun way to wrap up this season of the podcast. But once again, consider checking out the new Dead Man's Chest 20th anniversary merchandise on my merch store. I love how it came out, and if Disney doesn't do anything, like I have a feeling they won't, at least we can celebrate it here on the podcast. Thank you so much if you left a rating or a review on the podcast, and thank you for just listening. It makes my day when I remember that people are actually listening to this, and I'm not just talking into the void about Pirates of the Caribbean. So thank you so much for that. I'll see you next time to talk about the original Pirates 5 script, so make sure to tune in for that. But for now, take care. Podcast of the Caribbean is in no way affiliated with Disney. If you want to send me an email or a question, send it over to podcastofthecaribbean@gmail.com. You can also follow this podcast on Instagram and Threads at Podcast of the Caribbean, and over on Twitter/X and Bluesky at PodcastPOTC. I post fun content and trivia, so make sure to check those platforms out. You can also buy merchandise for the podcast over on TeePublic and Dashery. Be sure to keep a weather eye on the horizon, and always remember, dead men tell no tales.